I was bracing myself when I started Gone Home, my mind filled with the years of debate and controversy surrounding it. I suppose I was waiting for an insufferable art piece, but I shouldn't have worried. I was compelled to finish Gone Home in a sitting, appreciating the way it was able to fill out a single house with an entire family's worth of history, telling the intersecting stories of each character so naturally that it had me think on what could be inferred about a person by their strewn about belongings. I realized that these are the sorts of epiphanies that every pseudo-intellectual game journalist had in 2013, and I don't mean to add to that list. A new perspective then. I think a major reason as to why I was so open to the experience was my prior time spent with Minerva's Den, the excellent DLC for Bioshock 2. It may seem a strange connection, but the two share quite a bit, in regards to structure, narrative, and, most importantly, their developers. The two feel interconnected as a result, and more than just by some sly references. I say all this with a caveat. Minerva's Den is excellent, and for many of the same reasons as Gone Home, but it's saddled with far more bloat. Where I consider Gone Home an incredibly focused title, Minerva's Den is filled with moments where you aren't learning anything about the characters or the world, and, well, you're shooting. A lot. Before that, a brief look at the narrative of each. Both games cover similar ground, and each cast of characters is struggling with their own decisions and relationships. In Minerva's Den, this is done through the lens of C.M. Porter, a brilliant mathematician who comes to Rapture after the death of his wife. Audio logs and conversations chart his creation of the supercomputer known as the Thinker, and his attempts to humanize it, oblivious to the fact that his partner, Reed Wall, plots his demise. You play as Subject Sigma, a big daddy tasked with linking up with Porter and the Thinker so you can all make an escape out of Rapture. Gone Home puts you in the shoes of Kate Greenbrier after a trip abroad, going to her family's new home in the middle of the night only to find it empty. As you rifle through drawers, closets, and the dark corners of the house, you find various notes detailing how each member of the family is dealing with their own internal conflict, ranging from trying to become a published author to rekindling a marriage. Most notably, at certain points of the game you hear snippets of your sister's journal, each one slowly documenting her burgeoning romance and troubles trying to find her place in the world.
This from the girl who trashed her locker to, defend my honor. I've learned when to stop arguing, though. I don't think Lonnie even gets Lonnie sometimes.
In both titles, there's a real focus on the inner workings of each character, as well as a nearly identical method for telling their stories. The main difference between the two being what you're doing when you're not finding notes. So, combat. It makes up the bulk of the Minerva's Den experience, and for all the praise I have for the narrative, the constant interruptions for gunfights and hacking end up intruding on the most enjoyable aspects of the DLC. You'll go from listening to a poignant audio log only to have an enemy barrel towards you, or for a turret to reveal itself, and these two portions of the game don't really have anything to do with one another. To be fair, there are lots of games where the story and gameplay are separate from one another, but the goals of their stories are often less lofty, a basic reason to gun down monsters and feel like a badass. I wouldn't criticize, say, Gears of War or Resident Evil for this kind of internal conflict. In most games, the narrative elements exist to characterize the leads and lend their respective titles an action movie gravitas. Here, the gameplay of slugging through hordes of enemies like you're a superhero legitimately hurts some of the moments where you happen across an audio log detailing someone's relationship or the realities of life in Rapture. The other issue is that even when taken on its own, the gameplay is tedious. A cramped field of view and some excessively durable enemies take some of the visceral satisfaction out of combat. Little Sisters make a reappearance here as well, horde mode and all, and feel like a bit of an afterthought. The moral conundrum of whether to harvest them or not has lost its impact by this point, and it's just another example of a mechanic intruding on the real strengths of the game. One of the other problems with having to create a Bioshock title on such a small scale is that it necessitates having to incorporate the host of upgrades that would normally be doled out over the course of a 10-hour campaign. As a result, a number of the rewards for exploration in Minerva's Den end up being upgrades and resources for playstyles that you won't have time to fully delve into, and actually end up feeling less valuable than a new story from the halls of Rapture. Part of me can imagine some alternate reality version of Gone Home, only made with all the trappings of a stealth horror game. The narrative and house itself could remain unchanged, only layered on top of it would be a detection meter, an upgrade tree, and mournful spirits to avoid, unleashed by your sister's seance. Would this alternate reality version of the game have been better received, despite the fact that all the gameplay had nothing to do with the story and would only serve to impede the experience? That's what was going through my head while I played Minerva's Den, gunning down splicers with the same amount of enthusiasm as a kid being told to clean their plate before getting dessert. If there's a reason to play through Minerva's Den, it's not to experience the wonders of the ion laser or gravity well. The dissonance between the two halves of the game certainly made me more reciprocal to Gone Home, with its singular focus on telling its story. But when it comes to the quality of their stories and their characters, the games are much more competitive. Despite Rapture being a waterlogged objectivist nightmare at the bottom of the ocean, and the Greenbrier home being a large but relatively normal house, the design of the two areas is remarkably similar. Each is divided up into smaller sections, locked away behind keys, secret passages, and, in the case of Bioshock, specific use of your powers. My motive for exploring ended up being much the same too, trying to find any audio logs and notes that might be tucked away in the recesses of the world. I was surprised to find that Gone Home actually ends up being the more compelling title in regards to exploration, as the developers had a chance to focus on filling out the space with a ton of incidental details that, when taken as a whole, paint a vivid picture for what life was like for the Greenbriers. That isn't to say that Minerva's Den is poor in this regard, but this new section of Rapture never captures the verisimilitude of the Greenbrier house. As mentioned before, Gone Home's main story is also told through audio logs of a sort, but instead of using them to peer into the minds of a variety of characters, it's used to detail the burgeoning romance of your sister. She is essentially the main reason to progress, as unlocking the critical path coincides with listening to a new entry in her journal. I'd say that this represents the biggest flaw compared to Minerva's Den, where having multiple voiced characters imbued the story with a great degree of humanity, as you could chart the descending mental state of characters by their tone of voice alone. The writing in Gone Home is still strong across the entirety of its strewn about notes, but I think the emphasis on Sam and her relationship with Lonnie detracts a bit from the larger themes of the game. By exploring the Greenbrier house, the audience becomes privy to the difficulties of the entire family, from Terrence's continued trials to become a published author, to Janice trying to rekindle their marriage, in addition to Sam's dealing with the trials of an early relationship, and of it being dismissed by her parents as just being a phase. These other threads were just as interesting to me, but they aren't given the same attention the romance is, despite the fact that every member of the family triumphing over these personal issues is a really positive and unifying message. Voicing these struggles would have elevated the experience and brought together so many of the ideas that are already present throughout the game. The strongest bit of connective tissue between the two games is the ending of Minerva's Den, which may also be my favorite portion of either game. It almost plays like Gone Home in microcosm. After dispatching of Reed and his goons, the player makes their way through Porter's old apartment. You lower your weapons and are treated to one last audio log.
It's been so long.
Pearl, No, this isn't right. It isn't her. Thinker, stop the test.
But what's the matter, Milton?
Oh, God.
Don't you still love me?
Oh, God, I said end function, Thinker. Now! It's over.
It's painful and real and human, and this denouement encapsulates the best aspects of both titles, where the story is pushed to the forefront and the gameplay consists of taking it all in, and looking for any additional bits of narrative. It's wholly engaging, and this scene is far more iconic to me than, say, any of the Big Daddy encounters or Splicer ambushes. Every element of this moment, from the tragic log to the arrangement of the furniture, comes together to tell us about Porter. It's a scene that bridges the two games in my mind, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that this ending sequence would serve as a basis for Gone Home. It's weird. Minerva's Den feels like a relic. It's more than just being a decade old. It seems like a monument for an era where developers would have to sneak their ideas and writings into a AAA title for them to have any chance of being published. That's not to say that compromised titles are a thing of the past, or that gameplay and story always rest easily with each other, but it's been so long since I've played something where the two are so separate from each other. I suppose the flaws of Minerva's Den are responsible for the quality of Gone Home, giving the team at the Fulbright Company a framework to build off of and improve upon. In completing both titles, I was surprised to find Gone Home more compelling as a game, something I'm inclined to revisit in order to come over its details again. In stark contrast, despite being flush with all the amenities of an action game, Minerva's Den is something I'm far less likely to go back to, its best elements diluted over the sound of gunfire.